Hey, what's good with the YouTube, man? It's your boy Rojo, Convicts Perspective, joined by the extra tall for no reason, Big Flacco in the house, my boy.
Let's do it.
Today, we are going to be discussing little rebel groups, man, that have went against the Big Four. As you can tell in the title, man, we'll break down a little bit about each one. And for those of you who haven't heard of this before, it's a cold world. What you got, Flacco?
So first and foremost, man, we decided to do this topic because of the ongoing issues that have occurred between the MS-13 and the MA, which from my understanding, I heard about that this was already occurring way before. So this isn't the first time a group decided to go against one of the Big Four organizations. As we know, the Big Four are listed as follows: the MA, Mexican Mafia, the NF, Nuestra Familia, Aryan Brotherhood, and the Bgf. Now, the Bgf at this time are kind of non-existent, but they had their issues back in the days, and they did have a little stronghold for a minute. So one of the first ones I'm going to address, right, is probably the Bulldogs. You know, that whole issue, as we already know, man, was probably one of the first gangs to go against one of these organizations. You know, we could speak about Maravilla later on because they've had a up and down relationship, as well as 18th Street for years, but they were the first ones to really try to separate themselves from the organization. And a lot of that had to do with a lot of different individuals. Sammy Venegas, Crackers. You know, Sammy Venegas' brother was killed. They had paperwork on him. They wanted Crackers to hit one of them. There was all kinds of issues going on to where it became a Fresno thing. And there was, you know, you're going to hear different theories from different people. You know what I'm saying? As far as what happened, I think a lot of everything has something to do with it. You know, I don't think anybody is trying to mislead the people, if you get what I'm saying. What do you have to add about the Bulldogs?
Man, yeah, just like you're saying, I think it was a culmination of many different things, man. You guys have heard the accusations. You've heard people running off with money. You've heard about San Jose versus Fresno, kind of like basically red on red hood problems, not getting along, both thinking the other's not what they are. You know, you've heard about certain individuals getting extorted, and you've heard all kinds of things. And, you know, a major event like the splitting of the Bulldogs from the main group, it wouldn't just occur over probably one of those simple things. That issue would have been addressed, no big deal. But issue after issue after issue, all in a very short time frame, it made it to a point where they didn't feel like they could repair the damage on either side, I would think, you know. So it's not just one thing, like Flacco said.
Around 83 is probably when they started to split up. There were still some that banged Norte, so communication was a little bit different. You know what I mean? So they were still campaigning. And, you know, there were some incidents in San Quentin, but one of the main issues that happened, right, is I think around 84, a lot of them were refusing to go out to the yard because it was an NF stronghold. They ended up spearing a homeboy and killing him. So there was a lot of carnales and bros at that time that felt that was a cowardice act. That these guys had the opportunity to go out to the yard, but they refused, and they moved on them from the tier. So that was one of the first blushes that occurred. And I think that happened, I want to say 1984. Later on, they started to have a lot of incidents. And finally, they officially kind of broke off officially somewhere between 89 and 91. Because you still had a few Norteños that were holding on, but it took a while for them to campaign and, you know, pull people into the fold. And you also had a couple of renegades that tried to establish their own thing, the Bulldog Nation, which a traditional Bulldog did not accept. It did not last that long. And that was by Mousy Morales, who's one of the ones that tried to start that. And the other individual I want to say was, Pollo. I know his stepdad was actually an MA member, Fonzie. So I think that was at that time when you had Bulldogs and Sureños selling up for like temporarily. I think it was maybe like about 6 months or 9 months, and it didn't work out right. But they started to open up different relationships for a minute. And then finally, they just broke off from everybody. They're just doing their own thing, you know? But now I'm going to go into the next one.
Hold on real quick. I was told in Pelican Bay that 1988 was like the official day. Official 88, yeah.
Yeah, but it took a while to get out there, though. You know what I mean?
No
83 is when they started. They actually had a Bulldog Council, and they had all these different regulars they tried to produce and stuff. You know what I mean? But you're going to have different theories, man. The one history part that is hard for anybody to figure out is the Bulldogs, because you could talk to 20 different Bulldogs and they'll give you 20 different stories of what happened.
Same thing if you talk to 20 different, NF members or pros or Norteños.
Now, every one of these groups have had their issues. You had the Maravilla, you know what I'm saying, who had an up and down relationship with the MA all those years. They weren't officially ostracized from the MA in the beginning, you know what I'm saying, because there wasn't taxation at that time really on hoods. They had hoods that would help out, but it wasn't a mandatory thing till the 90s. And that's when the Trece started to come into play around the 90s. From OG Suleños told me that. They weren't really banging it back in the 80s. This came into the fold later on when they started to enforce the taxation. And so that's what kind of changed things. So you can go back to like the 60s, when a couple people were killed that were Maravilla, that were associated with the NF, believe it or not. And then you had some that were from Maravilla that were associated with the MA. So it was always an up and down relationship. So around that time, when they started to enforce the taxation, Maravilla was one of the strongest ones that resisted because they were one of the biggest hoods, right? And then for a minute, you also had the individuals from 18th Street, you know what I mean? They also kind of had a green light on them for a minute, but a lot of that had to do with politic play, you know what I mean? Campaigning, people, there was one person that was deemed no good, an MA member, he came back in the fold. So I'm not really going to go into that, but Maravilla was one that really went against the MA for a minute.
You know what I've heard, man, recently? I've heard varying things as far as Maravilla goes. I heard that they are back in the fold and not paying taxes.
I heard that too.
They're still back in the fold, but I've also heard they're back in the fold and they are paying taxes. So, like, who really knows, man? But, this is basically just about the ups and the downs. It's not going to really be about specific, details of them people's business. You know what I mean? But, just a grain of salt, man. It shows, man, like each group goes through their problems. There's no doubt about it, no matter who you are.
We've already discussed the other hoods like Lowell Street, you know what I mean?
Fox,
You know what I mean? All these different hoods, some of them came back into the fold, some of them didn't, but that's the thing, with that it wasn't about, either the two things that would get them a green light are either you're not paying taxes or you committed an offense against an MA member or a family member. That's going to be the only reasons why they're really going to have that green light, but they were one of the main ones for years, pushing that tax-free, motto and all that, but like I said, it's not just MANF that had issues. For years, believe it or not, the Bgf and Crips had a lot of conflict going on back in the days. Because you had, at that time around the late 70s, is when the Crips started to flourish. They became deeper than the Bgf. And back then, they still had a little bit of the structure in prison, because you had the Consolidated Crip Organization, Blue Magic. They had their own little recruiting pool too of an organization. So they were trying to enforce discipline and education, and they had their own rules, regulations, and so forth. And they kind of resisted the Bgf push because the Bgf felt that they paved the way, that they could put these individuals under their dictates. Dictate them. Yeah. But that wasn't going to work out too well. So Folsom, there was a lot of issues between the Bgf and Crips. San Quentin, there was a lot of issues. It's all, if you read any history book, they talk about it. And the thing that was interesting about that was because when it came to race, like black versus white, black versus Mexican, they would get together and get off. But when it was a time of peace, they were funking with each other.
Yeah, and as we talked about before, man, then there's also the Kumi, also known as the 415. And me and Flaco both discussed, our interactions and what we've seen go on. But what had happened is the Kumi was basically a blessed, smaller group that got the Bgf's blessing. Not so many words, like, whatever. They were respectful. Then they fell out. Numerous times they fall out, repair, and it would vary from yard to yard. And even at the times when, like we've explained before, there was never a true alliance between the NF or any black group or any group in particular, other than the Norteños. But we used to work hand in hand with them for the common enemy thing. There's been times when everything was good and the Norteños would go at it with the Kumis as well. What's happened in H Unit and Quentin, there was a good one. There was a good one somewhere else. But
Susanville, the Crips killed the homie on the yard. They killed Flaco from Capitol Park.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I didn't even know about that one until you brought me that one. Hey, we say something about that one real quick, actually, so these guys can know we never brought it up.
Well, from my understanding, right, they went to the hole out there, the yard, and they were having issues. And I think what it comes down to, right, is the same issues I used to see, and I thought that we needed to step on back. And this is the only fault that I've seen in some of the ways of how we tried to function. I felt at times we would try to put our expectations upon another group.
Right.
You're acting like JCats, you can't be doing this, you can't be doing that. So it's a catch-22 situation. You know what I mean? Like, either you get with the program or you don't, or you accept what they're doing. And it's kind of hard when you're on a yard, right? And you're disciplined, you're structured, you're doing all this, and you got dudes in the corner that are sniffing a Seroquel. You know what I'm saying? I seen that in Tracy. You know what I'm saying?
On an active whole yard?
On an active yard, man. I had to get at the Jama cat, man. And then something happened on the yard where removal went down, and he came and got at me, and he goes, "You put us in harm's way. Whoa. You should have told me." It was Shorty Rollins, Sekou, old school BGF cat. And I didn't like the way he came at me. So I basically told her, man, you know what I mean? Pump your brakes. You know what I mean? We don't even tell our own people when we're going to do a removal. Why the fuck am I going to tell you?
That's how things go wrong. You know what I mean? The people who know are the people who are doing the hitting and the person authorizing.
And so I told him, you should be securing your people. So you know what happened after that? They were all fucking in line being secured after that. You know what I'm saying? What I'm saying is sometimes I've seen in places, especially if you have a small collective that tries to speak out, well, you guys have to be doing this, you guys have to be doing this, respect the yard, respect this. You can't always put your expectations of how Norteños function upon another group.
Yeah, we function.
And that's going to cause conflict.
Therefore,
that's why some groups are not considered allies. You can work in alliance with those that are solid and worthy. Yeah. And there's a lot of them that are worthy, don't get me wrong, but there's some that are not. So an issue kicked off and basically a homeboy got beat to death. And the 5 dudes did not do nothing. They did not react, you know, in time of battle. So they got deemed no good for cowardice desertion acts. It was a beat down to death. So they, you know what I mean? They were putting in work.
What I heard, what Flacco's not saying is supposedly they assisted until the first block gun round went off, and then they just stayed laying down, whereas the Crips continued the assault that led to death.
Yeah.
So there's no coming back from that. That's an act of desertion. That's an act of cowardice. That's
the one thing that's going to get you deemed no good is an act of cowardice desertion, man.
Yeah,
like
that was an immediate lockup.
That's one of the only time I've had people hit was for that. You know what I'm saying? Because you can't sit there and try to claim and hide behind the bandera, take from the household, be secure and all that. And when stuff kicks off, be a coward. It's just not going to happen. Now, you know, there's been a lot of other issues within these big 4 organizations. You know what I mean? We already know about the New Flowers. They revolted in High Desert. You know, a lot of them had a working relationship as MAC reps, and they were setting shit up. You also have the AB and the NLR. There was actually a split within the NLR. Some of them wanted to align with the AB. Some of them wanted to go against the AB. The ones that wanted to go against the AB, they were found hung in their cell. AB was just taking care of business. They've also had the Wolfpack recently, skinheads who resisted AB control. So just because you have these ones that are considered big homies, there are smaller groups that go against them. There was an individual up there in High Desert, Little Red. He was from Warrior Skinheads. He had that yard, a level 4 yard, and he had it up to Skinhead Accord. So every time the AB were trying to send NLR members to that yard to take over, he was having them hit. So there's all kinds of politics being played where people are trying to push their agenda, you know, and it's a delicate game, you know. I mean, the white boys have a lot of issues, believe it or not. We just don't talk about it because we're not as familiarized with it. Right. But they actually have a lot of splinter groups that have had conflict with the AB.
Hey, I got a question for you, Flacco, man. I know you were the overall authority for all of Tracy for a considerable amount of time. In your experience there, that's when the Wolfpack was really pretty strong. You know what I mean? That's what we'll call it. How much of a nemesis were they? Were they a worthy adversary, or were they just like
they weren't that deep? They weren't that deep. You know what I'm saying? They were like a small splinter group off the AB at the time. They were like junior ABs at the time, was what the filter I got about them. To watch them, and any threat they pose, they're to be removed. They were kind of like in the sense of how we started to look at the NLR. the NLR in the 80s were not deemed in opposition in early 90s. They could walk our guards. Sometime around 96, it was implemented, or 97, that no NLR would be able to walk our yards. We were supposed to treat them like they were Mexican mafia. Because there's certain groups that we used to have implemented within our bylaws that we could not let walk our yards. One, any MA member came to the yard, we were supposed to remove them. You remember that.
Yep.
Any AB member, we're supposed to remove them.
Yep.
Any Bulldog, we're supposed to remove them.
Then NLR got added to the list, and the fall of 97. I was there when that directive came out.
And what happened with that was there's some individuals that got recruited back in the 70s as NLR. They're not even in contact. They were just NYA, and they had NLR tatted on them. They were getting whacked. You know what I'm saying?
They're like, what the fuck?
I mean, there was a couple of them that got whacked. I mean, right. You know, and they didn't even know what was hitting them. You know what I mean?
How often have you seen directives from prison go to YA in your history? Only never. A couple of times. I know that the NLRs started getting it, and the Bulldogs started getting it. Those are the only two that I know that the activities in the pen actually directly affected YA was Bulldogs, and NLR.
Yeah, I would have to agree. You know, and who else had issues at that time, man? I mean, there's been a lot of Sureño hoods, man, but that's a whole different. None of them really broke away free, if that makes sense. The Bulldogs were actually able to break away free. The Crips were able to do their own thing. You know what I'm saying? The NLR, they had to fall under AB authority. You know what I'm saying? Let me see. Well, we already know about the traditional Crips and Bloods. You know what I mean? It's just with this MS-13 and MA situation going on, I haven't got a chance to voice my opinion because I wasn't here doing the videos. If there's one group that could break away on their own and try to establish something for their people, it would probably be the MS-13. And I think the biggest issue that's going on with that is not with the MS-13 that are from LA. They're all under the MA. But with the MS-13 that are in other states that are influenced by the home country. You get what I'm saying?
That's exactly what I said when I did the video, yeah.
They have a whole different agenda. And let's keep it real. No one wants to say this, right? But traditionally, Salvadorians do not like Mexicans. They have issues. It's like a little conflict. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, other states don't get along. Like North Mexico, South Mexico, they have fun. It's kind of like that. It's not like a real hate, but I could see that each one of them has their own pride. You know what I mean? Salvadorian pride. Yeah. Why are we taking orders from the MA? And these people haven't been, you know, a lot of them haven't been in the state of California to understand how the politics work. You know, that's why the MS-13 and 18th Street were able to branch off and become so big, because they were the main groups that had people that weren't of Mexican descent. They were raza as far as Latino blood, but they were Salvadorians, Hondurans, and all that. So 18th Street and MS-13, they would get deported. They did a huge deportation thing around the 90s for all criminals to get them over to their home country. From there, they went on a recruiting frenzy. And when people were coming over to this country, instead of them just going to LA, they were going to Florida, Washington, D.C., New York, Connecticut, and they've been able to branch off. You could run into someone from MS, right? And they won't even know what a Sureño is. Yeah. I met one time in Santa Rita. He said straight up, when someone was trying to disrespect him, some white dude, right? He hollered back that he wasn't no Sureño. You know what I'm saying? That tripped me out. I mean, I was like,
I'm just MS. I'm not a Sureño.
Yeah. So I can see what's going on. I wonder how that's going to play into the Cali card. You know, because
what I think, bro, is just like I said before, that the MS and 18th Street both, because 18th Street's deep enough to do the same thing as well. That MS in California and on the West Coast in Arizona, you know, the heavy states that politic, I don't think that's going to change. But I think the first thing I would see, in my opinion, would be basically a split within themselves. MS-13 and MS. And everything that's as is going to stay how it is in California. That would be my opinion. I don't know, but.
Well, they have some people that got recruited in the MS-13, you know what I mean? That's big homies too. So
yeah,
that has a lot to do with it. But the out-of-state ones, they don't report to the Cali card. They've been reporting, you know, to the home, to the motherland for them, you mean? So, you know, it's, you know, like I said before, what brings off a separation? What fuels a cause or a movement? It's oppression. When you have your group or your collective and you feel you're being oppressed, told what to do, it's going to have some type of response, especially if you're not used to it. So this is a prime example. You know what I mean? They probably tried to force them under the Trece card, and there was a revolt. I don't know the details. There's a lot of people talking, but I will say this. They're deep enough, and they'll fight hard enough. And the way the feds works, if they keep on getting off with each other, what they're going to do is they're going to separate them. You know what I mean? They're going to put them on their own yard.
And that'll allow them to thrive.
You know?
Hey, you know what I was thinking too, Flox? Hey, Spencer, bro, is I'll forget her. I don't mean to interrupt. The guys that come from El Salvador, they're a different type of person. They grew up differently. They have different ways they conduct themselves. You know what I'm saying? They're just different from the traditional gang member from Southern California. They're different. They're third world. They grew up different, you know, and I don't mean that in any disrespectful way at all. 'Cause, you know, one of my best homies is Salvadorian, and I don't have no hate for nobody, but they grew up differently, bro. They're different. So when they come over here and people try to tell them what to do, they're not used to that, bro. They're like, what? I'm a grown man, bro. They just have a different upbringing. Their lifestyle's different. Their neighborhoods are extremely different, and the way they politic is just way different, bro. So they come over. If they're not from LA, San Diego, you know, Inland Empire, they're going to be way, way different than your traditional MS-13 member from Los.
And the way the feds are locking people down nowadays, it just changed the whole element of things. You know, you could go back about, let me see, 24 years ago. You'd be lucky to see maybe 2 or 3 carnals. You know what I'm saying? Maybe 10, 15 norteños spread out in the system. You know what I mean? It was a whole different atmosphere. Now you got a whole bunch. Now you got a whole bunch of norteños. Yeah. You got a whole bunch of all these other groups. It wasn't like that about 24, 25 years ago. You know, so the Fed system is spreading. And, you know, the feds, man, as we know, they're intelligent in some things, but when it comes just to common sense, they're fucking idiots sometimes. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? They'll throw you out there for a while. Oh, what's going on? Well, you know they're going to get off. They're going to keep on throwing them out there. You know? It's like when they came over from Operation Black Widow, they put Skip on a medium security yard, bro. And Happy. Living in a dorm. Can you imagine that, bro?
Hey, they were out there like,
man, they got them pieces ready real quick and went to work. You know what I mean?
Oh man. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You know, the feds, they have enough facilities, man. When I did the thing, when I did that article about them going at it in Texas, they have 120 different, you know, federal prisons, FCIs, you know, the difference between both of them, whatever case may be. They have enough places to segregate pretty much every group, because when you allow members of the NF to freely intermingle with other groups, there's going to be some alliances formed, because contrary to popular belief, the NF isn't out looking for enemies, bro. They're looking for allies. Above all else, the first thing to do is to establish other group segments. That's where the resources are.
I mean, their stance is always going to be against MA and AB and the feds.
For sure. But everybody else that hasn't shed blood, they're trying to, hey, let's work together. Hey, you guys control this border. We got the trade, you know, sewed up in Central and Northern California. Let's make this work for both of us. We got your back. Hey, you got ours. And that's why you see pictures with all them guys with the Texas students standing there all cool. I mean, if the feds really wanted to stop something, why are you giving them access to Barrio Azteca? Come on, they control all of the Texas border, bro.
Yeah.
You know, but so that just goes to what you're saying, man. Putting them in the feds was a horrible idea. Allowing them to intermingle freely is a horrible idea. But hey, get yours. You know.
Yeah. Now they're the ones getting slammed down, though. It's just it's crazy.
But they've already established everything they needed to establish over the last few years.
Yeah, but
and they're not going to hold them there forever.
You know why that happens, though, bro? You already know. It's because of their resistance to talk to administration.
Yeah.
There's other groups that talk freely and make promises and deals.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say their names, but there's groups. Anybody that's been on federal yard knows what the hell I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So I've heard it from many people. You know, they work out deals. Okay, we make sure this doesn't happen on the yard. It's like Mac reps, and you're supposed to be. You know what I mean?
You almost have to do that to be successful, though.
But the NF's never adapted that policy. You know what I'm saying? As far as the Fed guys, I don't know if the state's doing that now. You know what I mean? They probably
look at the end of hostilities. That was working something out with other groups. You know, there's to be no dealing with canine or enemy whatsoever. To do so would be considered act of treason. But you have these end of hostilities, which was a deal with administration and other enemy groups. So that it can be done.
It's supposed to be no cowardice dealings. No cowardice dealings. That leaves room to have some type of communication if it's necessary.
There needs to be communication to be successful.
You know, because you have to have some type of communication. You just have to secure yourself. You mean? So I mean, like, the way that's supposed to work is like, if it's cowardice dealings, it's like, okay, we're not going to go out, we're not going to get off on the yard and stuff. We're going to listen to the administration. Yeah, we got the enemy right there. You know what I'm saying?
So what's the end of hostilities then?
Yeah, well, you know what I'm talking about, though. You know what I mean? Like, things that they're not. Yeah, kind of shot myself in the foot, bro. But I mean, like, for instance,
I'm not trying to clown you. I'm just trying to say that's the rules, and you know, there's an exception here. So in order to be successful, sometimes you have to negotiate, bro. There's other powers on the yard. Number one is the administration, and then whatever enemies there may be.
Well, I mean, you know, the other cowardice act would be something like, you know what I mean? Well, one of your homeboys did something, we need to know who he is, so we give him up. That's the cowardice dealing with the enemy or the administration. Things like that. You get what I'm saying? Those are cowardice dealings, you know. But they still resist it, though. You know what I'm saying? And the thing is that everybody's paranoid, doesn't trust anybody, and worried about someone telling. That sometimes they shoot themselves in the foot. You know what I'm saying? When you should open a little bit of dialogue to where you can get access to things that you need.
I agree.
You know, Why not? I mean, you were slammed down for 20-something years. Now you're out there. Why you want to ruin it?
Yeah, you know what tripped me out, man? I stayed out for a while between like, I had a few years out on the streets. And when I came back, you know, I was an NF member, so it really didn't apply to me. But I seen how every time somebody had a question, even if you're going to ask the damn cop for some toilet paper, you got to take somebody with you and stuff. And then I started to hear where your celly's reading your mail to your hyena and stuff. It's like,
yeah.
The thing, you know, that creates a little bit of, you know, distrust and animosity and little hard feelings. Because what if you want to write something real freaky to your girl and you have to have somebody proofread it, bro? It's like, come on, man. You know what I'm saying? That goes a little too far. If somebody's going to tell, they're going to find a way to tell.
Last time I remember, it would have to be 602s, request form, stuff like that. You'd have to show.
I never had to do that, bro. I fill out my 602 and I shoot it.
I don't remember having to do it either because I was single cell, you know what I mean? For a minute, you know what I mean? So, but yeah, that was kind of the policy. Like they changed other things too, to where when you get to a yard, back in the 90s, when a new arrival got to the yard, you would basically have two patrols shadow him a little bit.
Yeah.
From a distance.
Always.
And try not to let him know that you're shadowing him. If he's sharp enough, he'll catch it. Nowadays, the new arrivals are having you sit on the bench and telling you to keep your hands in front of you.
Yeah, that's crazy, bro.
You know
I get it. You know, the better your security, the better you are. But damn, man, it creates a weird feeling, bro. It's like imagine coming out to a yard and you're told to sit like this. You think you're gonna get fucking hit. You might take off first. You're like, what the fuck?
That's what I told the homies when I seen the policy in Tracy, right? Did you ever watch us go to yard?
Mm-hmm.
In Tracy. Mm-hmm. Did you ever watch it?
Mm-hmm.
So you know how we used to do that little strip thing?
Yeah.
Ears and all that?
Yeah.
It's kind of a waste of time. If you want to bring a piece out there, you can get a piece out there. If I want to get a piece out there, I'll get it out there.
I've seen a few hits on them Tracy yards, and all they were doing, they're kind of raggedy pieces, but a piece is a piece.
Yeah.
You're proving your point. If you hit somebody with metal, you prove your point, no matter what the damage is. You know, I always seen them break off little pieces of fence, bro. You know, it's like,
oh yeah,
dude, you're gonna hit somebody. You're gonna hit somebody. You know, and I know from experience that when people first come out to the yard, you're extremely vigilant on them. After whoever's in charge says, oh, okay, it's cool, you forget about it. You're back to doing what you're doing. Well, yeah. that dude might still not forgot about it. He might be biding his time. So yeah, it's important. It's good to have practice and theory in case a time of war comes. You already have these specifics down on things you need to do and whatnot, and it becomes habitual, it becomes routine, it becomes habit. I get it, but it's also kind of a turnoff, you know?
I mean, there's been a lot of young homies that have laid it down over stuff like that, though. You know what I mean? They just feel like they get scared, think they're a target, you know what I mean? Don't have the proper education. Some people that enforce these policies kind of abuse it, if that makes sense. You know?
For sure.
That's what it comes down to, man. It's about not making your gente feel uncomfortable. If you do something, you have to, like personally, man, if I was running the yard, I would not have someone sitting at a bench with their hands like that. I would change the policy. I just couldn't do it. You know what I mean? I don't care what seat would implement that. I'm changing that policy. You know, because I know that's going to have more homeboys pissed off or more homeboys frustrated, more chances of someone laying it down, or more chances of someone having some animosity. Mm-hmm. You know, because people have animosity, you know what I'm saying, over issues like that. They don't forget. You may think it's okay because you're following policy and procedure, you know, but later on, man, they're going to remember that.
Yeah. That's always been my thing too. Like, all right, you got me now. Man, I'll wait a year, bro. You know what I mean? So I get it, bro. And there's people, and I'm not even really a devious dude. I just try to, you know, make sure that I have some sort of recourse. There's people out there that'll wait, and just plow you, bro. You know, and we're dealing with gang members, murderers, dangerous people. Come on, man.
That's how the game goes, though. Sometimes, man. So that's where people have to be cautious. You know what I mean? Like,
gangs
that's
are serious. Gangs are serious.
All these groups do the same thing, man. It's a you know, when you think of world politics, all the corrupt stuff, man, prison politics is just as bad, man. There's a whole bunch of backstabbing, you know what I mean? Riff-raff, all that kind of stuff happens all the time, man. So you have to be on your toes, you know what I'm saying? And that's why you have these groups who they splinter off and they resist because of certain people's actions, you know? And it works both ways, you know what I mean? It's just not one way, but I mean, this is a little breakdown about those who've resisted the Big Four. And I'm sure there's going to be more to do this in the future.
I have one question for you, Flacco, before we call it an episode. Was the Black Guerrilla family the real definition of a prison gang? I say no. I say they're a little different from the other three.
I say that they were more revolutionary.
Agreed.
Okay, that they believed in more against the system. You know what I mean? More Marxist beliefs, more socialist beliefs.
Yeah.
And that they later on tried to become an organization. You had actually a split within the BGF. Some wanted to commit crimes and make money and do this.
Wanted to be power to the people and stuff. Yeah.
The other ones wanted to do this.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, the thing is about, you know, groups like that, you can't be in a perpetual struggle pushing a movement without the attention of law enforcement. They're going to be on your ass. So that's what's always hurt the BGF was their stance against the system, because they were quick to kill cops. They've killed a lot of correctional officers, man. I've read a lot of police reports. You know what I mean? Quinn, man, I've read the whole thing about how they ordered it, man. And they have a whole chain of command too. They have, you know what I mean? The same thing.
So whereas I wouldn't classify BGF as a real traditional prison gang like the other three,
because of this,
that means they're none less dangerous though. The BGF.
No, they were really dangerous, but their main
they weren't playing back in the day.
The main opposition was the administration, though. But the problem with that is no one really talks about this, but this is keeping it 100. In the 70s and 80s, it was mostly white correctional officers.
Yeah.
You have maybe a Hispanic here and there, maybe black here and there, but they were all white. Mm-hmm. Therefore, they had racial overtones.
Every prison was like Susanville.
Therefore, they had a relationship with a lot of the AB members, right? So what ends up happening, one of theirs gets whacked or you know, a CO gets whacked, they would constantly try to set up BGF members to get killed by AB members. And it happened several times. Those are facts.
I'm really surprised throughout history that the BGF and AB didn't have considerable more conflict than they did.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think the NF killed more AB than the BGF killed AB. You know, yeah. I mean, those are pretty much factual basis, but that's, you know, that's part of the reason why we kind of severed ties, you know, with the alleged alliance that we tried to have. We tried to forge an alliance with them. Yeah. But what I was told was different. You know what I mean? Back then, what it was supposed to be was the NF would take care of the MA and the BGF would take care of the AB. And what I was told was a lot of them weren't handling business. And that's where the separation came to where, okay, we can coexist, but we're only going to work with the ones that want to work with us and put in work.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how it was, an individual basis throughout my whole time. My whole prison career was always an individual basis.
I met a lot of good BGF cats, though, you know what I mean? A lot of solid ones, though, that were assistants to the fullest, though.
Me too.
You know?
Yeah, shit, the dude I hung around most in Susanville was actually a BGF cat. You know what I mean? I hung around him more than the homies. He was my workout partner, etc. Shout out to Slim Davis. I don't know if he's still alive from West Oakland. Good dude, bro. Had my back to the fullest. You know what I mean? But you know, I've always debated in my own mind: is that a prison gang or is that something different? And I come up with it's something different. In my opinion,
I think a portion of them started to go that direction, man. But the thing that separates them is their whole concept is not about producing money. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Whereas DNF is about building up the organization through financial means.
Yeah.
The inmates more about having territory under their control. AB has a similar philosophy to the DNF. You know what I mean? Wants to build up their organization. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Whereas the BGF, they were more revolutionary against the system, and they didn't, try to enforce their beliefs upon their own people, their own culture.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? A few of them did, but they got rejected. Right. You get what I'm saying? So
and that's where the thing with the Crips comes in, and
the Crips and the Vanguard and all these different groups that splintered off, man. And that's why the BGF died out. They didn't have a recruiting pool no more. Right. You know what I'm saying? Because all these other groups decided to go up on their own, and instead of them shutting it down in the beginning, they let all these groups grow. Because you had literally, I think, 2 Crip organizations that were like in the same mindset as far as like NF or NLR or something like that. You had Consolidated Crip organization, and then you had the Blue Magic. And all these groups had their constitution, they had their bylaws, they had their recruiting things, they had their COC. So that kind of pushed the BGF out the picture.
Yeah, I agree. So before we close out, the only group that has been successful independently that's walked away from the Big Four, would you agree that it's the Bulldogs?
Yeah, the Bulldogs.
Me as well. All right, YouTube, if you guys got any questions, man, something else you want us to address, something we may have missed, feel free to let us know in the comments, man. We are open dialogue on here. Try to bring you the best stuff we can. Shout out to Flacco, good breakdown right now, man. He led the way on this train. Your boy Rojo.
I forgot a whole lot of stuff, guys. So sorry.
Yeah, we'll probably revisit this one again. Another thing I want to revisit is the AB's function on the streets, man, because we haven't never really talked about how they get down. I've been wanting to research that.
Yeah, I know a few people that were dealing with them back in the days.
There it is. There. Have a good day, YouTube. Make everything how you want it to be. Your boy Rojo, Big Flacco.